What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 118, Convos on the Pedicab. We're here at the head of the Wise County Conservatives, Andy Hopper. Excited to have you here. It's been a pretty
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, kind of, and it's been a lot of crazy stuff going on in GOP land, and we get to talk about it.
Right on. Happy to do so.
So, where is Wise County? Let's get there.
Okay, so Denton is,
Yes.
Fort Worth is, and like I was explaining a minute ago, it's like basically Decatur is right kind of in the middle between Wichita Falls and Fort Worth. So,
All right.
Yeah, so it's basically up there northwest. We're right on the edge of West Texas. I would say you go any farther west of Wise County and you're starting to see change in terrain, but we're that kind of last bit where you can still drill well, you can still do a little bit of agriculture, with annual rainfall. So it's a beautiful county with great people.
That's cool. What are the cities in Wise County?
Yeah, so by Austin standards, I don't think we have any cities. Like the largest city in Wise County is Bridgeport.
Okay.
And then followed by Decatur. And Bridgeport I think is between 5,000 and 10,000. Decatur is about 6,000, 7,000 people at this point. So it's a very rural county, but we have about 75,000 people in Wise County. So but it is growing fast. It's terrifying, Alex.
Really?
You go down the south part of the county and you see these beautiful vistas. As you go towards Jack, there's some really beautiful landforms out there. And you look out towards the west and you see all of that being dozed and houses being put in, and Wise County is going to change, and people are moving in. But the good part is a lot of those folks are political refugees that are moving to Wise County because they know it's conservative, and they know that they want to have some land to be able to do a little bit of homesteading. So that's what you're seeing is you see people that are actually conservatives, political exiles from other places.
From like California, Illinois.
We
and
do
New
get
York.
a lot of folks from California, and people are stressed about that. They're like, "Oh my gosh, California! I don't know what we're going to do with these people." But you know what? I mean, we knocked almost every door in Wise County, and almost every person we met from California or anywhere out west, they're here because they want to be here. And in many cases, they're the kind of conservatives we want here in Texas.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because before COVID, everybody hated the idea of Californians coming here. But now that COVID has happened and people saw what Gavin Newsom did, you're seeing a different group of Californians that are coming to Texas.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I don't know how long that's going to last. Certainly there's a period of time that's probably in our future somewhere that it's going to be terrifying. But at this point, we're getting the people that need to be here. And I think that they're actually making – honestly, the GOP's done polls, right? And we've actually seen that, anywhere from 55 to 60% of the people moving here are actually conservative or Republicans at the very least. And that's good. We've gotten redder as a result of the immigration from other states.
It's only good if people that you elect to office do what they tell you they're going to do.
No. It was not good because of any positive outcome of any of the policies that have been enacted. It's like basically God at work. That's the only thing I can say. It's not. I actually think that we've done everything wrong at the state level of basically trying to attract businesses that are overtly liberal here. That is what I hear over and over.
Well,
again.
we're doing that. It's like it's being done
this?
deliberately.
Yes.
Facebook comes in, builds a new office, and then Greg Abbott comes and talk about how we're the haven for we're the mecca for business growth.
Mm-hmm.
But the growth that you're inviting is preventing regular people who've lived here or who want to assimilate here from benefiting off of what this place has to offer.
Yeah, and it's not just that, like the tax abatements. I don't know what you think about it. I don't want to offend your
No,
sensibilities.
share.
All these tax abatements that we give these businesses that basically go and compete with businesses that have already established, that have basically grown up here, that are paying absurd amounts of taxes, and then we bring in, Amazon or just as an example, or any number of other California companies that basically pay nothing. And, we consider that some sort of conservative success. And I think we need to rethink what we're trying to what's the role of government.
Yeah, well, I know why they're doing that. They're doing it to create a higher tax base because Amazon brings in more jobs than your local corner bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Amazon comes in, now they're going to bring in like hundreds of thousands of people with them, and those hundreds of thousands of people are now going to pay taxes to the state of Texas. They're going to be more homes are going to get built.
Yeah.
The real estate developers love that. they give tons of money to political candidates, especially at the city level. So I understand exactly why they're doing it.
I mean, the why is clear, but is that the way government is supposed to work? Is that the kind of limited government that is exemplifies conservative policies? I don't believe so.
Well, no, it's the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like corporatism.
Yes.
It's exactly it's like UN WEF corporatism on a smaller scale.
Indeed.
But what's the solution?
Yeah. Well, I think the solution is that we need to have folks that are actually principled, that are actually running our state. We need people at every level of government, especially at the local level, that understand. We ask every single candidate in Wise County, and the last municipal election is a great example. Every single candidate that ran, we submitted a packet and said, hey, we would love for you to get back with us. Here's some questions. Could you please answer these? We'd love to interview you. And I think we had like 60, nearly 70 candidates that are running for local office, either school board, city council, and of those people, I think we got 15 people who wanted to even talk to the conservative group. And as a result of that, we would ask them, hey,
why so little?
Because a lot of folks that run in municipal elections are not, I don't believe, one of us. I think that they hide under the banner of being nonpartisan.
Well, they all call themselves nonpartisan, right? Because they have to be nonpartisan.
Yeah. But what you find out is that in many cases their voting records are Democrat or whatever.
Even in Wise County.
Even in Wise County, there's no doubt. I'm not saying it's most of them. Some of them just don't want to get involved. They don't want to touch politics, and maybe they don't have a lot of political sensibilities that they understand that if they just came out and just were bold conservatives, they would get elected by a greater margin than they.
Or if they're
would.
bold with their principles, right? Like you don't have to be conservative. Like I don't believe that you have to be on one side or the other. I just think that like you have to be bold in terms of like sticking by what you say you're going to do.
Well, there's two kinds of people in the world, or probably 15 different kinds of people, but in this case there's at least two different kinds of folks. There's some folks that see porn in your school library or in your municipal library and you say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that these two men are doing this thing in the kids section. Or you say, oh, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. That's the thing, is some people will basically just say, I don't want to touch any kind of controversy. I don't know why I'm even doing this. I don't know why I'm in politics. It's definitely not to protect people's liberty. It's definitely not to protect
it's
kids.
for them to like improve their political career.
Indeed.
Where they say, oh, I don't want to touch it. It's too controversial. My focus group says it's not a good idea. And I'm like, really? Aren't you supposed to run for public office to actually, I don't know, help the people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or aren't you running for public office to do the things that somebody with a family and kids, or somebody who's trying to start a business, or somebody who's like trying to become an artist or an athlete or something meaningful or substantial? Aren't you doing that to make it so that they can focus on what they want to focus on instead of being stressed about how their government is operating?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
I mean, but yeah, so we'll submit these questionnaires, and we'll always ask, in a video interview, hey, what is the function of government? What's the purpose of government? And we've yet to have a single person at that level ever answer that question even remotely accurately. Like the idea that government is to protect your liberties is unknown to the majority
I have a
of
question
elected
though. Would you
officials.
guys ever endorse somebody who wasn't strictly conservative about everything, but answered every question just completely honestly, and and they agreed with you on enough key issues that it didn't matter?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've had school board candidates that expressed a honest inquisitiveness, like, I have never heard this before, please tell me more. And we have either recommended, I don't think we've endorsed candidates, but I could be wrong, but I don't think we've ever endorsed candidates that were basically completely clueless but had a very, very strong sense of, I want to do the right thing. But we have recommended candidates over others for that reason. But it depends on what.
Okay.
I mean, we're not going to do that for a state senator.
Like hypothetically.
Yeah.
All right, so hypothetically, let's say you get a candidate who's adamantly against vaccine mandates. Went to every single protest to stop forced masking.
But couldn't explain the function of government. Yeah, I understand.
No, not even that. Like, was adamantly against masking children, was going to do everything in their power to not let that ever come to Texas again. Didn't want China or hostile foreign countries owning land in the state of Texas, but they also liked smoking weed and had like a neutral opinion on abortion or something like that.
That would be actually a hard sell with our group. We're pretty hardcore.
Right. Or like, they were unapologetically pro 2A, where you shouldn't have any kind of regulations on the type of firearms you should use. But they just happen to like not care about that. They happen to be indifferent about that issue, and they happen to like not think smoking weed is a big deal.
I don't think we've been presented with that, actually. But if that was the case, I mean, I think we would probably just kind of look at it and say, you know what, who are you running against? If you're running against an overt liberal, I mean, that's often what you see is you see folks that are basically, not politically astute, but have a desire to save our state, to stand up for our community. And they may not be right on everything, but the thing is oftentimes, again, especially in these municipal elections that are nonpartisan, is they're often running against a flaming, educrat or Democrat. And that is a very clear-cut choice. I mean, you don't have to be right on everything.
Yeah,
but,
or like you're running against some guy like Charlie Garrett or something like
Right,
that. Like,
right.
would you rather have somebody that's a little more socially liberal, but like actually was gonna like stick to their guns on what they believed in, and the conservative values that they aligned with happen to also align with your values, and they are an easier set of values to sell to the public than some of the overt social stuff.
Right. Well, I think that an interesting case here, and I think what you're kind of getting at is this idea that there's a lot of libertarians out there, and there really are. I mean, I would say there's less in the conservative movement than people estimate that there is.
Really?
But there are. I mean, at least in rural Texas. I mean, maybe if you get into some of the more urban areas.
If you get into
see
Austin,
more.
it's all like the whole conservative
Movement
the whole
is
people who are
libertarians.
conservatives are like way more libertarian than they are like pure conservatives.
Mm-hmm. And I could deal with libertarians. There's like different classes of libertarians for sure. There's libertarians that are basically conservatives and don't know it, and then there's actually libertarians that are pro prostitution, pro drugs, whatever. But at least if they have the basis that they believe liberty is the end goal, I mean, I can deal with that. You can definitely work with that. And usually with those folks, you can actually sit down and say, oh, okay, do you have any lines that you want to draw in terms of law reflecting our moral sensibilities? And it's like, no. I mean, I think that as long as you don't affect other people, you should be fine. It's like, oh, okay, really? So, I mean, what do you think the age of consent should be? Oh, well, I mean, should be 18. Well, why do you think it's 18? What if it's 17? What if it's 16? What if it's 21? It's our sensibilities and morality basically moving its way into law. We as a society have decided that you need to be a certain age to have consent. You need to be a certain age to be able to be married. You need to be a certain age in order to drink.
Your body also stops,
Yeah.
your brain stops developing at 25, right?
Yeah.
Like, so your brain is still actively developing up until you're 25 years old.
Yeah.
Which is why like car insurance is a lot higher for people under 25.
Yeah. But I mean, my point is that we absolutely put moral lines in our law, and we should, and that's a conservative principle that we should support. And libertarians will eventually agree with that. So I've actually found that libertarians be fairly sensible if you actually.
I think in some ways they're more conservative than conservatives, and in some ways they're just more liberal than liberals, right? It just depends on what the issue is, right?
But I mean, I'm absolutely draw the line. Prostitution basically brings young women into terrible lifestyles.
Well, it's also created sex trafficking and does stuff like that.
There's nothing good about it. And so, I mean, that's one of those things that I'm sorry, that's a hard stop. Like, we can't permit that society. Our laws do need to reflect at some level our moral sensibilities, and as a Christian nation. So I think that's the main thing. But if you came into a libertarian that's like, I'm pro drugs and pro prostitution, but you know what? I'm going to defend your 2A rights. I'm going to defend, your right to
not get a vaccine.
I'm going to defend your right to not be overly taxed, and I want limited government. And you're running against a hardcore liberal. I'm like, okay, I'll take that guy.
Or even a rhino.
Yeah.
Or even like a Charlie Garrett type rhino. I would take that guy in a second.
I've actually started calling them quasi-Democrats.
Quasi?
Yeah, I mean, because, the thing about it is I've actually come to the conclusion, I'll see what you think about this.
All right.
I've come to the conclusion that Texas actually never went red in the sense that a lot of people actually assume that it did. That, in fact, we just had a lot of folks that were basically kind of blue dog Democrats that said, you know what, I think that the tides are turning and Republicans are going to take over the South. I think let's just all say we're Republicans tomorrow. And I think you get a lot of Rick Perrys, a lot of folks that were actually previous Democrats that start to basically identify as Republicans. And now when you see the legislators here in Austin slap the backs of all the Democrats, giving them bear hugs on the first day, and they treat the conservatives like Brian Slate and Tony Tinterholt like absolute pariahs, I think we might get the sense that these people are not Republicans.
That is true. I mean, but there was also a movie called Outrage a long time ago. Remember that movie?
No,
it was an HBO movie, and it talked about it was. I mean, look, all these network movies skew very liberal, right? But it was from like 2008, right, before we were like fully developed, or 2008 to 2012 period or something like that. I think it was like around like the early 2010s. And they basically talked about how like a lot of like the staunchest and strictest and the people that were like the most, conservative Republicans, and granted Republicans were different back then because it was the party of George Bush. and like moral lecturing versus the party of actual freedom and limited government and like individual autonomy. I think the Republican Party's changed a lot in the past 10 years. It's more the party of like it used to be the party of Mr. Burns, and now it's becoming the party of like Lenny and Carl from The Simpsons, right? So this is from like 10 years ago, right? And 10 years ago, it felt like the Republican Party, at least for common, regular, everyday folks, like, it felt like the Republican Party was like for plutocrats, and like religious fundamentalists, and they basically went off and talked about how a lot of like religious fundamentalist Republicans were like secretly closet cases. And talked about like different stories about how like one dude got caught in like in a steam room with 3 different dudes, and one guy got caught in a men's room like filleting some dude in like a men's stall, and then they also talked about how like Democrats and Republicans in Washington all go out to dinner together and like they pretend that they hate each other, but it's really just pro wrestling. So it's kind of what it reminded me of.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And so, we talked about Mike Drury a minute ago. He's our county chair, and I was having a conversation with him, and he kind of been reading a book about, the history of Republicanism in Texas. And, he said, Andy, I realized something that I never really latched onto. He says, you know what? The Republican Party of Texas has never really been conservative as we define conservative. Like limited government, pro-liberty. He says it's never been, like all the way from the Reconstruction to now. He says it's never really been. It's either been like the party of business, the party of maybe big government, but maybe we're against this or that or whatever. But he says, now we're at a stage where we're actually talking about the ideals that Reagan actually espoused, and in this when he gave that famous speech, "A Time for Choosing" for Barry Goldwater. You ever seen that?
No.
He is.
But we could talk about Ronald Reagan after this. So
yeah, but I mean, so Ronald Reagan. I mean, you might say when he was president that maybe he didn't accomplish a lot of the things that he actually preached. But when he was
Pfizer can't get sued because of Ronald Reagan's Vaccine Safety Act.
Indeed,
in
there's no doubt.
He also was the one who started implementing gun control laws as governor of California, and now you have no fault divorce. Like you have a lot of stuff that Reagan did. Kind of set the tone for why we're why we are in clown world today.
Yeah, you are not wrong. But if you listen to like
but he gave great speeches.
The movement,
but he gave great speeches. Yeah,
the Barry Goldwater, kind of Republican perspective of limited government. That just that wing of the conservative branch of the Republican Party has really never had its day, and we're actually starting to see, with Matt Rinaldi as the head of the Republican Party of Texas.
I like Matt Rinaldi.
You are seeing that kind of idea of the the core conservative principles that are espoused by those folks actually have their day in the narrative of what it means to be a Texas conservative, a Texas Republican. And that and Mike was saying, like, this is the first time this has happened. It's like we're actually trying to convince people that limited government's really a good thing, because we basically, like you say, I mean, every Republican for the last 20 or 30 years has raised the debt, has expanded government, has secretly, like the Patriot Act was basically passed by executive order in George Bush long before the Patriot Act was passed in Congress.
How did you feel about the Patriot Act when it got put forward?
I was in my 20s. Like, I was a kid. And
I was in my teens. I was like in high school. So
yeah. And so, when the Patriot Act was passed, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a horrible idea.
Oh, all right.
It was a horrible idea.
A lot of your Republican friends probably all supported it, though.
That was that was a hard stop for me. Like, I probably bought into the ideas like, well, George Bush said that there's weapons of mass destruction. I probably would have argued in the early 2000s to anyone that that he was basically fighting the good fight there. But it was when the Patriot Act was passed, and then we actually found out what they were doing with it, that I think that a lot of people basically realized that this was an expansion of government and started to wonder how long this had actually been the idea. I mean,
it's been planned for decades. They had the project. You ever heard of the Project for the New American Century?
Mm-hmm.
Project for a New American Century was a neoconservative think tank in the 1990s with like George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Jeb Bush, a bunch of other neocon war criminals, and they were talking about how they could spread neoconservative values to countries that are undemocratic, like countries like in the Middle East and like third world countries and whatnot, right? And one of the things that they talked about was that an event, like a terrorist attack, would probably need to occur in order to unite the American public on us doing that actively, and then 9/11 happens.
So I mean, what do you think? I mean, we're learning now that maybe the CIA had a major role in the death of JFK.
Wait, maybe? What do you mean maybe?
I know, like almost certainly, right?
Well, it was the CIA and the mafia also had a huge role.
Yeah.
Because back then the mafia was super involved in politics. I mean, the mafia pretty much took over all the trade unions, and trade unions fund politicians.
I mean, it's just when you actually recognize the fact that our government has operated mostly in secret for half a century, maybe longer. I mean, I would argue it actually goes all the way back to probably the 19th century. But certainly we are in a situation where the federal government is more or less on autopilot. And I totally believe that, the agencies of the federal government are probably perfectly capable at this point to probably even raise their own money. I mean, I don't even think that, let's say we were to have Congress basically be filled with, great, fine conservatives and statesmen, that would be wonderful. But I think they would actually discover that the government runs on its own anyways. I mean, we are an autocratic, bureaucracy with 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats, and the federal government does not operate within anything that the people or the states ever agree to. So yeah, your point is well taken. Like, I think that we've had a lot of folks in the last, half century that are at times we say, oh, they're conservative heroes. And I think that they may have espoused those things, and that's kind of what I'm referring to. But when you actually get down to it, they get into office. Did you see that? And not saying that there's any veracity to it, but did you see Putin was basically kind of asked, hey, what do you hear from presidents about, when they get into office and what actually happens? And he basically made the point that every time he talks to a U.S. president, they find out once they're in office that they're not in charge of anything. And I don't know if that's true. It could be just, a little bit of
it could be, but you can't listen. And like, this Ukraine war is a total sham, right? But you also got to understand that, like, you can't walk around and make Putin out to be like this based conservative hero.
Yeah,
also,
he's
like,
not.
He's a psycho. Like, that guy is a total sociopathic killer.
There's no doubt. But do you think there's any possibility that there might be a little truth that, you get sworn in as president and they say, hey, you know what? There's all this classified material, but you don't have need to know. I mean, I think there's no doubt.
Well, I don't know if they whisper to you like that, but they'll just say, "Oh no, sir, this is we got this covered, sir. This is your briefing. Would you like anything, sir? Would you like coffee? Would you like something to eat?" Like, they would just kind of they would treat you like you're in charge, but you're not really in charge. Oh, sir, we can handle this if you like. If you ask for the documents, they're not gonna say no, right? Because you're the president.
I don't know. I mean, there was a book I read some time back where they, ostensibly Bill Clinton, when he found out that
they'll just give you a bunch of jumbled stuff, right? So it'll just be impossible for you to read it because of how long and how detailed and how stuff is going to just get redacted. Like, they'll give you the documents, but like, chances are, like,
so you think
the average political leader just doesn't have like the mental fortitude or the ability to like do anything because they have a million other responsibilities too, right?
Interesting. So you think on any topic that a president becomes aware of, that if he said, give me all the information, that they would do it? You think they would?
I think they would I think there's so much information available that people wouldn't even know what to do with it. Like, you would have that information and you wouldn't even know what to do. So it wouldn't even make a difference. Like, you give these guys all, like, if Joe Biden asked for all the information, do you think Joe Biden's going to do anything?
No, I mean, I think any one of us, any rational person that has done any amount of reading, the moment you become president, you say, okay, let me take some something to keep me awake, drink a bunch of coffee, and I'm going to sit here for the next 15 days and just get briefed on every single thing the federal government doing, every stovepipe, every single thing.
Yeah, while you have to negotiate with world leaders, while there's a million current events happening, while all of these things are going on, right? Like, you could ask for but I mean, I'm spitballing here, right? But you could ask for like thousands of pages of documents, right? Probably hundreds. At this point, it's probably in the hundreds of thousands, right? Okay, so good luck reading hundreds of thousands of pages when there's a new current thing happening every 20 minutes, so to speak, when we have a 24-hour news cycle. And, I mean, let's say you're like the sitting president and you want to get every file related to JFK and you want to declassify it. Okay, cool. Well, in the meantime, while you're declassifying that, it would really be a shame if, like, another mass shooting occurred. It would really be a shame if, like, I don't know, another incident regarding police brutality were to occur, and because we have control of the algorithms on social media, we're going to make everybody see it, and that's going to be the new thing that you have to worry about. Now you got to address the nation about this.
Well, I think it's
so it just seems.
I think it's an interesting question. So, like, I'll throw something out there. You may be aware of this. Did you know that there's actually no law pertaining to classified information? It is completely executive order. So the president is in ostensibly completely autocratic control over anything to do with classified information. So when he says, here's JFK files, it's not like anyone else's decision as to whether it becomes declassified. I mean, it is the president's 100% decision if he knows it exists. So I think that's the big question. And, it depends on how big of a tinfoil hat you have as to whether you believe that he has need to know. I actually really believe that the government is so large that even if you were to sit there and like calculate how much hours in the day, how many minutes are in an hour, how much time could the president spend in 4 years to try to unravel what the government's even up to with 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats, 14 million people on the government payroll, many millions more that work for the defense industry. There's no way that he could ever even unravel or figure out what the government's even up to.
No, it's impossible. That's not even the president's job. Like, that's the job of somebody like an Alex Jones, right? Like, it's just not the president's job. It's the president's job to like act on information that they are being given for the betterment of this country.
Well, I mean, it's the president's job to protect our liberty when he finds out
Yeah,
that the government
act in the best interest, which is protecting. Yeah.
No, but he finds out that the government is basically, wasting your money, losing billions of dollars. Like, what was it? September 10th, 2001.
With $2.5 trillion we're missing. Okay, but what do we do? Okay, but
Yeah.
what can the next president do about that? Like, let's say like Trump comes back into office, or we get President Ron DeSantis. Like, what would Ron DeSantis be able to do to recover $2.5 trillion?
Yeah. Well, you're preaching to the wrong choir, because I actually believe that the way we save our country is to basically build up the local and state governments.
I know, I agree with you.
I mean, I think that's the way. I mean, we're talking about this from a federal level, and I think it's very interesting, but I think that, what this last few minutes of conversation has kind of showed us is how bad of straits we are in. We have an out-of-control federal government, and the solution to the founders, I mean, the founders actually talked about in the Federalist Papers, and like, what is the most powerful branch of government of all in the United States? What's the most powerful branch of government? The answer is the state legislatures. They believed that our state Bill of Rights were actually the real repository of our rights, as enumerated, by the folks in the states, that basically said, not the federal Bill of Rights, but the state Bill of Rights. And, if the states are going to stand up to the federal government, I think that that's the appropriate and, founder-driven view.
That's what counters all of the overreach that's happening, right?
Yes.
Because if we didn't have state governments, then based on what we talked about, we would have the type of tyranny that's happening in like China or in the EU or in Justin Trudeau's Canada.
It's the only thing that's even saved us.
It's doing a very good job of saving us, and you're really seeing how great the American system of government is, despite how bad our government officials are.
Right.
The system that we've built, I'm a lot more confident in our system of government now than I ever would have been, considering all of the human rights abuses that could have unfolded as a result of COVID. And granted, a lot did, but a whole lot of them did not, and it's because of where we are.
Yeah.
Like Texas, it didn't change that much in Texas.
It did. I think that we suffer from kind of having gone through it, and then we become naturalized to it. I do. I mean,
it changed, but it didn't change as bad as it could have been. Like, it seems like everything now, like the New World Order did not come to Texas, but the New World Order is coming to New York City.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean,
Yes.
Living in Wise County during COVID, like that you really never saw masks, you never saw this, and every time I went to Austin, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in some sort of totalitarian state. Now, to say that COVID really didn't affect us, like it totally did, and if you didn't notice it, it was awful down here. I don't know how anybody dealt with it, but it could have been worse. I think that the abuses actually found their way into all kinds of different areas of government that we've yet to even perceive. Like, take SB 6 from the 87th legislature that basically indemnified every business that basically followed any level of government guideline, or so basically it had the effect of codifying CDC guidelines into state law. We have not yet even seen the abuses that's going to come out of that. I mean, it's unbelievable. We essentially expanded Governor Abbott's power instead of we live in a state where the governor has extremely expansive emergency powers, and we're one of only 8 states that still have emergency declarations in place. I mean,
that emergency declaration is also to stop mayors like Steve Adler, I mean, he's not the mayor anymore, thank God, from issuing mandates again, though.
That's what they say. Of course, he could have issued a special session. In fact, there was that third special session that they never brought that up.
But I can kind of see that happening too. Or I mean, that is what they're saying.
Yeah. That's the narrative. That's the narrative of the governor, is that, well, we have to do this because, it's only under my emergency declarative authority that I was able to put these executive orders in place in the first place. And the moment, I mean, that's the argument.
And people are okay with it because they haven't seen it hit home to them yet.
But did you see the governor really defend his vaccine mandate protection? He didn't really ever defend it. Like, there's no, I mean, somebody made the point is like, I went on Monster after he issued the executive order versus going on Monster the day before and said, how many jobs in Texas require vaccines? It's just the same. I mean, there's no business that's saying, oh man, I mean, I don't want to issue a vaccine mandate. Here's the case law of the state basically going after me. There's not. I mean, there really isn't. There's no protection.
That's true. And then the mainstream conservatives are going to say, well, you're interfering with the business's right to decide what they want to do. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, they're only doing that because they're under pressure from the federal government. So if you apply an equal amount of pressure on them, then they're just going to leave you alone and not do it.
Right. No, that's right. That's right. I mean, the purpose of government is to protect our liberty, and when we basically have, and the other thing that kills me is like, look at these businesses that are perpetrating these vaccine mandates and recognize that they would not exist if it wasn't for every level of government giving them subsidies and handouts. I mean, love some of the things Elon Musk is doing, but like, take Tesla. It would not exist at all if it wasn't for billions and billions of dollars being poured into it from the federal government and from state subsidies for years. I mean, so the idea that, oh, well, we should honor that right of that business to do it at once. No, it's essentially a state-run operation in many regards.
Yeah, and Elon Musk going super Elon Musk catering to conservatives on Twitter. It's really just a plan to A, have control over everybody's data, and B, to curry favor with the next GOP administration. Like if Ron DeSantis becomes president, he's going to get so many handouts from a Ron DeSantis administration. It's going to be unreal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. Because by how you freed up Twitter, you're allowing someone like that to get elected.
So what do you think? I mean, do you think
that's my theory about it?
Do you think he's actually fighting for our, against censorship on Twitter? Do you actually see evidence of that? Like, no. I saw some extra followers and stuff, but I've seen people that have been deboosted and stuff since he actually.
I don't know. I mean, my follower count has gone up.
Yeah.
My follow count since Elon Musk took over, it's gone up by over 3,000 followers.
Do you think that's the measurement?
Well, I mean, I think I had that one viral tweet where I went to the city council and talked about how I was talking about Elon Musk too, about how we need to censor the internet and that should be our legislative priority in Congress. And, like it got like 500,000 views almost on Twitter.
Interesting.
So that I think played a big role. And I got close to 3,000 followers from that. And then I got another few hundred from my InfoWars appearance with Harrison Smith. And then I got another like probably 100 or so just from being at the Capitol.
Gotcha.
So we'll see. I think when I go on Twitter, it's a lot more conservative now. Like my feed is a lot more conservative.
Well, I mean, but that could just be an artifact of
That's
the fact that you got out there and say, "Hey, give me $9," and you get a blue check, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're giving blue checks," and then a lot of people left. I mean, it could be that you have more conservative followers simply because a lot of liberals basically said.
No, I've just seen more conservatives accounts on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of people who have signed up. I don't know. I'm actually really hopeful. I hope he's doing a good job.
Well, he could still be doing something that's a net positive for you, but he's not doing it for ethical reasons. You know what I mean? Like he could not be doing it because of morals and ethics.
It's possible.
It's like the Federal Reserve selling all their stocks at the top of the market for ethical reasons. Like it's obviously not for moral and ethical purposes.
Right. I do find it interesting that you can say I am fighting censorship, and you will get 3 conservatives in Wise County that get blue checks. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm plugging for the guy. I hope he's doing a good job. But I still see a lot of people who are saying that they're being shadow banned and blocked, and maybe there's just some cruft in Twitter and some employees that still have a perspective that we don't share. But
I mean, all of that is okay. Sorry. Yeah, all of that is pretty wild. How do you think this legislative session is going to go? Speaking of which, right? Because like we do have a pretty dangerous federal government considering what's happening, especially these past 2 years. Maybe it's going to be a little better now that you have a split Congress, but you see a lot of really bad stuff happening, and you see us going down a very dangerous slope. I don't know if have you listened to any of the World Economic Forum meetings? I listened to that stuff in my car because I have like an hour drive into Austin, and it's very scary the language that they use.
I mean, so bold about it. I mean,
Well, they are, but they're very smart about it. Like, they're slick. They use a lot of very progressive, inclusive language to try and manufacture consent from the general, unassuming public to do what they want to do. And what they want to do is have complete control and consolidation of everybody's day-to-day life.
But don't you find it terrifying how many people that you talk to have no idea that globalism is even a thing and that we should fear it? I mean, and it's almost like if you bring it up to some, they're like, it's a conspiracy theory. You might as well have a tinfoil hat on.
I think it's also about how you talk to people, though.
Yeah, maybe so.
I think if you walk around saying they, and you sound like Alex Jones, and everything you say is like a right-wing talking point, or if you're like overly socially conservative, it might turn people off from that.
I just think.
Do you know what I mean?
I think
you know what I mean. So
folks,
I think it's about how you. I think if you got to communicate very with people like who are not fully aware of that. You got to be like very nice and very like thoughtful. Like you have to almost communicate what's happening like you would to like a kindergarten teacher, or like how like talk to somebody like they're wear a mask alone in their car. You know that's how like. And a lot of us we make a mistake of talking at people and trying to like shove our ideas on people's faces that don't want to be listened to. So you got to do it in a way that's.
It's true. Yeah, I'm not talking about folks door to door. I mean, I'm talking about people in government that are unaware that the World Economic Forum is a thing. So
yeah, oh yeah, you know I had this lady named Krista Bentley told me about that.
Mm-hmm.
She said you should ask everybody that you talk to about the World Economic Forum, see if they even know who these people are. And I'm like, everybody knows about the World Economic Forum, and then you're saying no, so that's kind of.
you would think that they would, but you know, it's certainly at some level, you know, of course, Greg Abbott knows what the World Economic Forum is.
Yeah, he goes to their meetings.
Yeah,
of
course he
knows.
Of them. And so, you know, and probably Dade Phelan knows. I mean, but the question is like the broad swath of Texas legislators. Do they know? Are they tracking this? Or are they just blindly voting for bills because Dade Phelan tells them to? And so we're basically getting that agenda seeping into Texas, or maybe actually flooding into Texas laws. You know, one of the most interesting, and I think it's totally related, you know, in the 86th legislature, this is a stat that I think it was Daniel Miller that actually pointed this out originally, is that I think there was like 445 bills passed in the 86th legislature. I think that's pretty close. And of that, 45% simply moved federal law into state law. And that's like directly like basically globalism, because basically you're basically taking globalism that's coming into the federal government, and then the federal government is basically telling the states what to do and removing their state sovereignty and their ability to fight against it. Just like that CDC guidelines being codified into state law.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it's actually globalism, because basically we're losing our sovereignty. The things that you say are great about our country, that, you know, the states can basically, you know, run themselves and tell the federal government no, but then we're losing that authority because we're actually passing it into our own laws.
Well, I mean, there's hope for this session, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's hopes. I mean, do you think it's going to be a good session?
Well, I think it depends on. I think Dan Patrick did the right thing in terms of who he put as chairs on the Senate.
Except for one, yeah, right.
Who was the one?
Well, we have one Democrat chair in the Senate.
What committee are they chairing?
I can't remember.
Was it like is it Health and Human Services?
No,
is it something with finance? Is it something with education?
Right. I think it was minor. Yeah, it was minor.
Then whatever, that's fine. Then if it's something minor that doesn't really have that big of a deal, you know, or if it's like we're on the committee for water protection and you have a Democrat on the committee for like protecting water, it's not. I'm not going to flip out about that, right?
I understand what you're saying. But like literally, we have only 8 legislative priorities, and I think that we suffer from like the tyranny of low expectations. Like it is so easy for our legislators just to say, you know what? There's not a single person who wants Democrats in charge. Listen, kudos to Dan Patrick for only putting one in. But, like, it would have been really easy for him to put 0.
Okay. But I'm just saying that's not that big of it. Like, if it's some minor, silly
let's talk about what Dade Phelan does.
Let's talk about that, because that determines whether or not it determines how immune we are to the Biden regime. I hate saying it, but that's just what it feels like right now. Like, it just like that's you know, because, like, what Phelan does determines how immune we are to what's happening in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when do you find that out? Like, what's going on with that?
Like, so ask the question again.
Like, when do we find out when Phelan puts his chairs?
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna find that in the next couple of weeks. You know, so that's gonna be the next thing that when we discover, you know. And you know, that battle's going on right now. Like, you have the GOP putting radio ads in Phelan's district, and then he's putting his own counter ads.
What are his counter ads saying?
I was driving all day today, but I read this morning that, you know, in fact, that we now know that there was counter ads. I don't think that the audio, or at least by the time I was looking at Twitter, that wasn't posted. So I'd love to hear what it had to say. But I mean, I'm sure I can almost guess. It's like basically, well, we don't want to be like Washington, D.C. I mean, that's what you're going to hear. It's like, Austin, they're asking Austin to be like Washington, D.C. I mean, I can just hear it because that's their talking point.
Right, because they made Kevin McCarthy actually concede to demands that would cause him to do what he was elected to do.
Isn't it amazing that that happened the week before of the first session of the Texas legislature, where we basically saw what 20 conservatives can do by standing together?
Well, what 20 people can do. I hate even just saying left and right? Because the progressive Democrats could have done the same thing to Nancy Pelosi. Right,
Yeah.
but they didn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, they operate in lockstep.
Which is dangerous. That's how Nazism and fascism works when one group operates in lockstep. Because it means that nobody has a mind of their own and they're not actually exercising the democratic process.
Well, I mean, so you
know what I mean?
You make
Like
a good point.
yeah.
Like, anytime people stand together and stand against the man, I'm like pro underdog. Like, as a person, I'm pro underdog.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you saw those folks basically stand up. And when you saw them basically standing over Lauren and Matt Gaetz, and it just basically towering over them and trying to intimidate them, and they stood strong.
They didn't care.
No, it was
well Lauren also didn't care too, because she's like, man, I almost lost my election. She doesn't care. She literally almost lost.
I mean, we need more people like that. We need more people who are willing to do the right thing in the face of adversity. Says, I don't care if I lose. I don't care what my political future is. I'm going to do the right thing for our. And so you saw that in Texas, but you saw that it was we had 2 or 3 handfuls in Washington. And of course, it's a larger body, but in Texas we have 150 representatives, and we only really had 3 with us, and at times 6 to 7. But when it came time to actually defend that Democrat chair point of order, we only had 6. And really throughout that entire rules debate, we only really had 3 consistently with us. And so, we have some good guys that are willing to stand up, but we just need some more. I mean, I actually subscribe 100% to the belief that we have a broad number of representatives in the Texas legislature that would do the right thing if they just had cover. They're just, they don't have the backbone. So if we had some more conservatives, they would act.
Why don't they have the backbone? I mean, this is what shouldn't the voters be the backbone? Look how the voters voted.
Yeah.
How are your voters not the backbone?
You would hope.
It doesn't make sense, right?
You would hope. So, I mean, first of all, these guys, so there's a big difference in the Senate and the House, but in the House, these guys run 100% of the time. Like a 2-year cycle, think about that. So you run from December to, I mean, probably even earlier, but a redistricting year, you run from probably November to February, elections in March, and then you basically are riding on your coattails until the next session, and then as soon as the session starts, you basically have a few months, and then you start seeing people basically starting to run against these people, and they're already running again. So there's only a few months in a House reps career that they're not running and accumulating money and working.
Well, that's a problem.
And so the problem is that, and Brian Slayton characterized this well. I've heard this from many different reps, that basically the problem that you have in the Texas House is basically it changed with Bonin. Basically, what you saw with Strauss is you basically here, I'm going to penalize you if you don't do the right thing. But what you started to see with Bonin, and definitely with Phelan, is basically the carrot as well. I am going to give you all these things with the intention of being able to take those away if you don't do what I want. So pretty soon you find yourself answering to the analogy that was wonderful that somebody posited was like Walmart. Think about Walmart and Huffy Bikes. You come along and come up with this awesome bike, and you say, I want to sell this, and you open up a little store on your block, and you start selling Huffy Bikes, and Walmart says, man, that Huffy Bikes are awesome, just like those. And could we sell some of your bikes at Walmart? Heck yeah, I want to sell some bikes at Walmart. Yeah. So then they start selling your bikes, and pretty soon 95% of your inventory is being sold to Walmart. Well, that's all great. Everybody's making money until Walmart says, I want to buy your factory. I don't want to sell my factory to you. I'm making money. You're making money. Why would I do that? Well, I tell you what, we don't need your bikes anymore. That's exactly what happens in the Texas legislature. They basically get everybody by a hook, and they basically are the source of campaign funds. They cut these people off from any other sources. It's not like some of these reps. I mean, like Charlie Garrett. I mean, it's not like these reps are going to go along and say, you know what, I'm going to start soliciting conservative donations. No, they're going to get it from Associated Republican Texas. They're going to get it from Texas for Lawsuit Reform. They're going to get it from, the Texas Realtors, Texas for Public Education. They're going to get, the butts, the HEB money. They're going to get money from these PACs that are basically overtly moderate. Even vote.
They're gonna get PACs of people who have money, and these people all they care about is a dollar. Hold on, this is a staple. My girlfriend always calls me. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry. Hey babe, what's up? Well, I'm literally doing a podcast. Are you home? All right, bye. Love you. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
All right. Anyway, what were we saying?
No, I'm just saying. So they get hooked on all this PAC money that basically is either directly given by Dade Phelan or given by the cabal, and okayed by Dade Phelan and Greg Abbott. And so basically, after a couple cycles of this, do you think they answer to them, or do you think they answer to the voters? They don't have answer to the voters.
They don't need to, because they're getting all that. They're getting all that corporate money, and that corporate money is giving them a nice war chest. That they don't really make that much money on a yearly basis. But when they come into Austin, it's like, oh, we're gonna go get these fancy cocktails. We're gonna get steak. We're gonna get lap dances. We're gonna go. It's a party. It's a cocktail party.
And look at the hostility from.
Hey, we're gonna get some.
Like,
we could get some insider trading advice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that's going down.
Yeah. And look at the hostility from people like Jared Patterson and Jeff Leach and Dade Phelan to Matt Rinaldi right now because of what he's doing. He's basically going down into Phelan's district. He's weaponizing the party for our principles.
Good.
And that's good. Like you and I are pro that. But
I think.
But they believe the party exists to shill for elected representatives.
Yeah, I think it's good because the principles that we're doing are not really. I don't even think they're Republican principles. I think that most of the principles are for everybody, like banning mandates and like protecting kids and like not giving irreversible bodily surgeries to children. I don't think that's a Republican principle. I think that's like a universal principle that's for everybody.
That's because you believe in truth. I mean,
like I don't even call it like a Republican principle. I just think that like a lot of these Republican principles, or like not having a hostile, citizens of a hostile foreign country that aren't U.S. citizens buying large swaths of land here, like that's a literal national security threat. Like, I don't think that makes you a Republican or a Democrat. I think that's just common sense. Like, you shouldn't do that because this affects everybody.
And yet you find these things in the Republican platform and not the Democrat.
They're in the Republican platform, but it doesn't really matter what platform it is. It's just I like the platform because the platform affects. Like, I don't even consider myself like a liberal or conservative. I think I'm pretty like apolitical, but this just makes sense, right?
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, of course, that narrative is one that you can basically use because we're talking about truth here, and and it just so happens that we have folks that basically have fought for truth in the Republican platform. So, and that could change, right? I mean, you can go to the states, you can go to the national, the RNC. They don't represent our principles.
Well, look at what happened just now. Yeah.
So I mean, they don't represent our principles at all. So I mean, but I think that door to door.
Well, who even votes now? Who votes for the RNC chair?
I mean, well, there's 3 people in Texas, right? Matt Rinaldi and then 2 other folks vote for.
Who are the other 2 folks? Like, what are their titles by title?
Yeah. So, I don't remember.
The names I don't care about. I just want to know, like, the GOP chair votes. Who are the other, like, officials that vote?
Yeah, I don't know. There's 2 others.
Okay. So it's basically GOP chairs from every state and 2 other miscellaneous officials?
Yeah, that find their way onto the.
I'm kind of surprised by the result, though.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I would have thought that Harmeet would have done better. Oh, sorry, I would have thought that she would have done better. I was kind of disappointed, but Ronna McDaniel, oh my gosh.
Well, she's like spending money on private jets, and they're putting money towards like candidates in Alaska versus helping somebody like Lake or Blake Masters, and like the entire establishment GOP isn't even defending Lake anymore when it comes to this election day. When it comes to what happened on election day, and I don't know what happened on election day, and maybe some of what but like you have GOP establishment pundits saying, well, she shouldn't have alienated the McCain voters. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, maybe, but like over 50% of the machines on election day didn't work in a county that was going to attract a very large amount of Kari Lake voters.
Yeah, that's
really strange. It's also really strange that Stephen Riker and Bill Gates, who are in charge of the Arizona elections, no relation to the eugenicist, were part of a pact to stop America First Republicans from getting into office. Like, that is an oddity. Like, that is really weird. And you kind of have to wonder, like, why aren't people standing with Kari Lake? Why is that not a talking point anymore?
Like I say, there's totally truth in the fact that every county in this state, and probably every county in the United States, and then if you go up, I mean, I was just reading a Twitter thread where somebody was talking about like the constituency of the RNC, and basically recognizing that there's a solid minority of grassroots conservatives, kind of like the ones who run our party in Texas, but there's a much greater group of people who are basically hostile to all the things you just talked about. They're hostile to the idea of America first or Texas first. They're hostile to the idea of states having sovereignty. They're hostile to the idea that that we should actually shrink government and reduce our debt and actually fight for
Well, I
those
mean,
things.
the CEO of HEB doesn't want people homesteading.
No. So I mean,
you know what I mean? Like the
So
CEO from HEB wants you to eat the bugs because the bugs that Bill Gates makes from his farms are going to be sold on HEB counters.
So it's really the whole grassroots versus establishment, concepts. Whatever nouns you want to use, and it doesn't matter. It's like Jesus fought the establishment too. I mean, these are transcendental, categories that have kind of defied time. But these are definitely groups of people who basically do not want anything to change, and they are unprincipled, and they won't fight for principle. They won't fight.
But they
for
call
country.
themselves. But then they say that everything they do is based on their principles, or they use super stupid little buzzwords like "I'm a compassionate conservative."
Right.
But
look what's going on in Texas, though. I mean, it's basically like whatever you want to call it. Like, if you're apolitical, I don't really care. I mean, the thing is, you agree with the legislative priorities, you agree with the platform of the Republican Party, and that's great. Like, conservatives have basically inhabited the party, and it's a beautiful thing. You go down to the convention last June, and these are our people, and yet there's a smaller subset of people there that are just like adamantly opposed to what's being passed, what's being done. Like they don't.
Well, they're
they don't agree.
stuffed shirt corporatists.
But then you have elected officials in Texas that basically are openly hostile to the platform of the Republican Party. You have elected officials that say, you know what, I don't care about the party. I don't care about the platform. Well, why are you running as a Republican?
Well, they don't say that. They don't say that. They'll criticize a technicality over a law that someone like Brian Slayton proposed. Like that. That's what they'll do.
Or take the Dem Chairs thing. Like Plank 233, where they basically have 3 parts to it, and it's basically like paraphrasing. Like part A is like, we're going to have a secret ballot so that we don't get Democrats involved in the process. We are going to select someone who is not going to involve Democrats in the process, and and basically you got Dade Phelan that comes along and says, "Oh, you know what? You didn't follow A, so therefore I'm not going to follow B." And it's like, wait a minute, it's the whole plank. You didn't want to follow it at all, and you're just parsing it out. And now you're trying to tell us that because Tony Tinderhold actually wanted a floor vote on Speaker, that he's violating, which is the third part, that they all follow the caucus vote. It's ridiculous. It's
but that's the thing. Like a regular person that's just trying to buy eggs doesn't care about that.
No.
And that's what the establishment Republican Party just will focus on. And of course they lose because a regular person like me doesn't care.
No.
I
mean, they'll have the sound bite and say, they'll probably say like Tony Tinderhold, doesn't support the Republican Party platform.
No,
which is ludicrous.
Right. So what happens if you get Democrat chairs or Rhino chairs in some of these important committees? What will happen?
Yeah. So let's break this down because this is a really interesting topic.
I think we only got a few minutes left. It's getting dark.
Okay.
All right.
Well, so basically the topic of Democrat chairs, and this is like one of the most beautiful issues door to door, especially in rural Texas where I'm at. It's like you could go to anybody's door and say, do you want Democrats in charge of anything? And they're like, heck no, I hate Democrats. Like that is people's visceral reaction because they see what they've done.
Yeah.
So then in Texas, you basically have a speaker that is determined that he could actually gain power as the most liberal member of the Republican caucus, the only one that's supported by the LGBTQ, group Equality Texas.
Is he? Okay.
He's the only one with a passing grade. Like that is Dade Phelan.
I didn't know. All right. Well.
And so he basically comes along and says, hey, I'm the most liberal guy. Nobody's going to like me. But if I get support from Democrats and then go to the Republicans, I can show up and say, you know what, I only need a few of you jerks to basically support
I'm bipartisan.
Me. Yeah.
Then he talks about how bipartisan
and
he
so
is.
all the Republicans know it's like, crap, he has all the Democrats as a block. What am I going to do? I guess I'll support Dade Phelan. But what do you think he trades for support from Democrats? He says, I'll give you chairmanships. And so that's what he does. He gives them chairmanships in return for support. So the whole thing about Democrat committee chairmanships, yes, they kill bills. Yes, we don't want them in leadership. Yes, there's actually good reasons why we don't want that. But the main reason, if you have time to explain to a voter, the main reason why we're against it is because he trades committee chairmanships for support from Dems, which means we always get the most liberal speaker in the entire House, the entire body, because those are the ones the Dems support. So that's the real reason.
So you get a speaker that doesn't represent the voting bloc.
Yeah, it's not like we're going to get the most conservative speaker if you eliminate it, but you're going to get somebody that is at least in the middle of the body.
Well, you just want somebody that's going to help people's lives improve.
Well, you want
that's really it. You know?
Yeah, but in the case of Dade Phelan, like Tony Tinderholt well characterized, I mean, Dade Phelan like openly tries to intimidate folks that violate anything that he wants. He basically tells them they're not going to get committee chairmanships if he doesn't support him. If you don't vote for him, he's not going to get bills passed. I mean, that is not the role or the activity that you expect from a reasonable speaker. You want to, in most of Texas history, we learn that speakers generally were not exercising this power. They were basically, nobody wanted the job. Nobody wanted the job as Texas speaker. It's like, I don't get to vote. I have to do all this paperwork. It's like, but those are people who are exercising their power in a limited fashion and are trying to get things moving forward. If you take your job as speaker, in the manner that was envisioned by the framers of the Texas Constitution, you don't act like Dade Phelan. But given that we have someone that's acting like Dade Phelan, we're trying to rein in his power. We're trying to decentralize power away from the speaker and put it back in the hands of the representatives who are representing you and me.
Yeah. I mean, like, when I was at the Capitol, like, the biggest takeaways I got from being there those 2 days were grow your own food and buy Bitcoin. Because nobody is coming to save you.
Oh, and rural internet. Like, you need to talk about rural internet because that
Well,
apparently is what they really care about.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I think like, that could be like for a follow up to talk about that, or casino gambling or all that.
I'm just joking.
Oh yeah. But what do you think the most important priority is in the Republican Party?
To me?
Yeah, what do you think the most important is?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's without a doubt it's election integrity at this point. I mean, the thing is like we last session we passed an election integrity omnibus, and if you talk to most reps, they're like, we fixed election integrity. Oh, really? So how often do we have to clean voter rolls? Oh, we don't actually have to.
Well, you just look at the mess that's in Austin or in major cities, and you see that.
Right.
Just look at like what happened in Houston with Lena Hidalgo and everything.
How can you say that we have passed an election integrity bill when you cannot clean voter, when you don't have a mandatory, period that you have to clean voter?
Yeah.
rolls?
Then you also look at like the Dallas school boards and everything like that, and like the Dallas school boards are probably more woke than Austin right now. So there is something, and I don't think that everyday people who live in those areas want this stuff, but these are the people that are getting elected. Yeah, maybe that should get looked into, or maybe we should have stronger voting laws. Totally agree with you. You want to know my biggest priority is, and it's not even listed in the priority list.
Okay, fair enough.
But my number one priority is the ability for people in Texas to have self-custody over their own finances.
Okay.
And it's independent financial sovereignty. And what that means is that the state of Texas starts putting forth laws, or starts taking measures to, accumulate Bitcoin, adopt Bitcoin, promote companies. Instead of promoting woke mega corporations into Texas, you start promoting companies that agree with a lot of the values of freedom and liberty that we have. A lot of those companies are going to be either Bitcoin mining companies, they're going to be Bitcoin custody companies, they're going to be companies that are big on us having sound money. They're going to be companies that are big on us having control over our own finances. Like, look what happened in Canada. Justin Trudeau froze bank accounts of truckers, Mm-hmm. So you want to have, like, we're the fastest growing state, I think, in America next to Florida. Like, we're one of the fastest growing states in the U.S. A lot of people are coming here, and rightfully so. You want to be in a situation where you can't stop the growth. So when we do have growth, you want growth that's going to benefit people from the bottom up. And when you have people that have lived here for a long time, being able to take advantage of a newer and better currency than the U.S. dollar that promotes freedom, and then they get to hold on and transact with that currency while our dollar is getting debased, while we are while we have a $32 trillion deficit that will never get paid off. Us being able to do that, counties being able to accept taxes in Bitcoin, Bitcoin companies coming here, small businesses being able to accept Bitcoin payments, all of that stuff insulates us not only from the overreach of our federal government, but it creates the bedrock to preserve our everyday financial sovereignty and it also creates the bedrock to preserve our free speech and autonomy from overreach.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. It's the biggest threat. I think that we have so many threats that are very big that face us, but one of the larger threats that faces us is the imminent. One of the things you hear from the talking points of like the globalist agenda is that we're all going to be on some sort of digital currency,
a central
where they can,
bank digital currency,
so that we're we're going to have no freedom at all. And if
Yeah.
they decide that you're not socially acceptable, they're just going to turn you off. And
exactly.
And that's what we're
Yeah.
facing. So, I 100% believe that, the state of Texas needs to, we've talked about state sovereignty a lot of here, and I really believe that Texas needs to put its big boy pants on and learn to tell the federal government no.
Okay, and you know what?
Having
an
our
asset
currency is like central to that. Like that was the scam.
Yes.
The scam of the. It should have been such a great thing. I was so excited about the Texas Bullion Repository years ago, and then it turned out that it was a nothing burger. And we're not willing to tell the federal government no to simple things like, hey, what if individual people want to deposit their own gold? Well, that violates federal banking laws. Well, who cares? It's like, what's the point of being a sovereign state if we can't protect ourselves against a government that is actively basically debasing and devaluing our currency? We have to be able to take proactive steps, and what you're talking about is essentially that, but taken to a different route. Totally agree. I think we've got to do something to be able to protect. We've got to be willing. When we see
if our state government used, I don't know, like 1/20th of our budget surplus, and just bought Bitcoin and just stored it in a vault, right? In 10 years from now, we have the potential to be one of the wealthiest, most prosperous economies as a nation.
So why do you think they don't? Like, certainly they know. Like that they could do something like that, like instead of just like investing in infrastructure.
Because they have high.
$32.5
Well, I think a lot of people don't know. They're not very educated about this stuff. Like I don't know if Dave Phelan or anybody actually read the Bitcoin Standard or understand how Bitcoin works.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of like corporate finance bros see Bitcoin as a threat to their hegemony.
Yeah.
I think that once you start adopting Bitcoin and you start having Bitcoin on your balance sheet, you have to be a lot more careful with what you spend on, because you're not going to spend something that's going to only go up in value. You're going to want to store it, and then all of a sudden now we can't fund. Now you can't fund the gender studies clinic in Afghanistan.
Yeah. You're right.
Right. So then a lot of
a
lot of the donors are not going to be able to get their piece of the pie anymore. So they're going to be against it. And so like a lot of it is just high time preference spending.
Basically unprincipled people.
Yes, and a lot of reps, like their careers are only 2 years anyway, so they want to make as much as they can. They want to do this forever. They don't want to leave the cocktail party. They start going against the grain and talking about this stuff, especially if it's not being caught on with the majority of the public, because like everybody got brainwashed into thinking Bitcoin's bad because of FTX, because of Luna, because of all the stuff that's happened, even though these types of price moves, they happen every second year of a 4-year cycle. Like this is just what happens. But people aren't aware of that. Like, most people, like they sit around in their car with a mask on.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just they don't see a political benefit in doing that. But at the county level, you could definitely do that at the county level. Like maybe like a small county like Wise County can just offer people the opportunity to pay their county taxes in Bitcoin and give them a 30% discount or something like that. Like you could start doing that like in the smaller counties.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea. I think that people don't recognize like how big $32.5 billion is. When you think about just like
trillion, Andy, it's trillion.
No, the state.
Oh,
surplus.
The state. Okay,
state surplus. Sorry. No, we're not talking about national debt here. We're talking about like the state surplus. Just a few years ago, that was the amount of money that Russia put in their entire military. Like just not that many years ago. $32.5 billion is a massive amount of money. We could do an amazing amount with that.
Yeah, but instead, we got to build more. We got to spend it on schools because, like, the fill in the blank ISD needs a water park.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like like AstroTurf, or like their gravel parking lots aren't good enough.
They need a state of the art training facility.
Right.
The 15-year-old kids needs
district.
an NFL weight room.
Right.
The high school needs an NFL weight room, even though you can get almost the same workout, if not a similar workout, from going to a grungy gym with a squat rack and a bench.
Right. And that was actually like a talking point of like one of the local ISDs that's very large that touches Wise County. They actually made I was talking to, they had a humongous proposed bond, and it was $1 billion, and then they like lowered it to 760. It was one of the biggest bonds that's ever occurred in the state, and they lowered it to 765 million, like completely reasonable.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And I said, what's the point? And it's like, well, we'd like to be a destination district. I said, I would like you to poll the voters in Wise County and ask them how many people want to have a destination district of any kind. And
especially you're not benefiting. It's not like the bar owner is going to make any more money from you being a destination district. Like, it's not like the restaurant owner, it's not like the waiters or the bartenders or anybody's going to benefit from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make a difference. But anyway, we pretty much talked about a lot of stuff. Right?
Oh, dude, we covered a lot.
We covered a lot.
Yeah.
Andy, how do we get a hold of you?
Well, I'll tell you what. So we have a website, wisecountyconservatives.com. So wiseconservatives.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Andy Hopper TX.
You got an Instagram?
I have on Instagram. I don't do much on there.
All right. Okay.
So, yeah. So Andy Hopper TX on Twitter. So yeah, definitely give me a follow. Love to interact with you. I mean, I tell you what. I just really think we need more people involved. So hopefully your audience continues to grow. And so
hopefully, yeah. I mean, you're helping.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, you're just talking to a right winger from Wise County. But I think that the cool part is like we have a lot of people like me that have gotten involved in the last few years, and I mean, it's like the demographic is actually fairly young. Not that I'm young, but we actually have lots and lots of people now that are getting into, conservative grassroots politics that are actually 20 and 30 something, and I think this is awesome. You know what I mean? Like we need to pass this on.
I think the ideas of freedom and sound money are the ways to get younger people to vote for conservative, not like some of the older stuff that people your age or. Actually, people older than you, people like your parents' age, got involved in.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
I appreciate
that.
That's what I'm saying, right?
No, but you're right.
Yeah, like the most popular senators amongst people 20 to 35 or something like that. You know who the most popular senator is in that age group, for people in that age group.
Mm-mm.
Cynthia Lummis, the Bitcoiner from Wyoming, most popular senator within my age group. And you know who the second most popular senator was?
I mean,
Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, because we're focusing on young people, all right, of all parties. But the point of the matter is that freedom wins, and that's a takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
And young people want freedom more than they want free shit.
Yeah,
and that's what I think people on the right need to understand, because that's how you win.
Yep. Okay. Well, hey, thanks a lot, Alex. Really appreciate it.
Andy, super happy to
see ya.
All right.